In Hollow Knight, the knight can receive a special flower from one of Hallownest's former great knights, Zamer. Giving the same type of flower to the Godseeker unlocks an additional ending for the game. The flower reappears in Silksong as the Everbloom, but with some notable differences, such as its means of acquisition and it not being destroyed if Hornet takes damage with it in her inventory. I've discussed the flower before on this channel, but never had a video dedicated specifically to its lore, and now the events of Silksong have definitely warranted one. In Hollow Knight, Zamer has become the Grey Mourner upon the death of her lover, a mantis known as the Traitor's Child. When the knight encounters her, she asks them to take an item called the Delicate Flower to her lover's grave on the other side of the kingdom. She refers to the flower as rare and one of a kind and warns the knight to be careful with it lest it be destroyed. If the knight returns to her with the flower having been ruined, Zamer is upset but can supply as many replacement flowers as needed, proving that the first flower she gave is not the only one in existence. The description of being one of a kind could still be true though, as each individual flower may be unique in the same way as snowflakes. They even look a little like snowflakes. Once the knight successfully delivers the flower to the grave, more flowers sprout when they place it on the ground, and the spirit of the Traitor's Child acknowledges the knight. Zamer is then able to come to terms with her loss and disappears, leaving only a mask shard behind. The knight can take the newly grown flowers from the gravesite and give them to various NPCs, including the Godseeker. When the knight completes the Pantheon of Hallownest inside Godhome, the void entity known as the Shade Lord attempts to exit the Dream Realm through the Godseeker's physical body, but if she is holding a delicate flower, both she and the Shade Lord vanish, leaving behind the flower with one of its petals turned black from having been touched by void. This ending makes it obvious that although the flower is fragile, it has some innate ability to resist the void. While void is a manifestation of regret, the flower seems to represent acceptance, the opposite of regret. In Silksong, Hornet seeks the same type of flower so she can safely descend into the void to cut Grandmother Silk free from it and prevent Farloom's destruction. The flower cannot be found in Farloom, but Hornet knows it from her memory and asks the snail shamans to help her access that memory. They are able to do so using the power from 3 of Farloom's old hearts, placing Hornet inside the red memory where the White Lady presents her with an Everbloom. Hornet wakes up holding the Everbloom, which allows her resistance to the void in multiple forms, such as no longer suffering silk depletion upon taking damage from void. The flower remains intact until Hornet attempts to exit the Lake of Void after rescuing Lace, upon which the two are assisted by the void entity Knight in reaching safety. In Hollow Knight, the White Lady tells the Knight that the delicate flower was not created by her, but instead brought from Zamer's homeland. Farloom's snail shamans have heard of the flower, though are not aware of it ever having bloomed within the kingdom, indicating that a traveler to Farloom had brought information about the flower with them at some point. Since Zamer was a member of the Pale Court, it makes sense that the White Lady would know about the flower and its properties. The White Lady had a role in raising Hornet, at one point showing her one of the flowers and explaining its means of resisting void. The manifestation of the White Lady and the Red Memory can be interacted with despite being a figment of the past, and whether the White Lady gifted Hornet the Everbloom in reality, the memory version of her does so. Hornet acknowledges that the flower in its regular form would be too fragile to sustain here long, and given how dangerous Farloom has become with the void infestation, she's reasonable to assume that she couldn't make it to the abyss without something breaking the flower. She also states that her silk holds a faint memory of the flower, and that if it were grasped tightly enough within her silk, she would be able to use it as needed for her intentions. This implies that the Everbloom Hornet obtains is strengthened by her own silk, and possibly the power of the old hearts, assuming their power was not totally consumed by entering the red memory alone. Furthermore, it's specifically the light of the flower that repels void, as listed in its inventory description and several instances of dialogue. Even in the red memory, the form of the flower isn't clearly seen, only the light from it, which the White Lady also references. With this considered, the specific Everbloom that Hornet obtains might actually be spun from her silk, but imbued with the same void-repelling light as the flower in its original form, thus not being fragile. It seems that the light cannot exist on its own without some physical form to anchor it, as when the Everbloom finally does dissolve during the Sister of the Void ending cutscene, its light is extinguished along with it. It's worth noting that the acceptance which the flower's light embodies comes from confronting regrets. Zamare regrets having lost her lover, but the flower being placed on her lover's grave and seen by her spirit reminds Zamare that she did not regret loving the traitor's child, allowing her to come to terms with her grief. The Godseeker is quite literally faced with void-given form, and it may be through her accepting what has happened that the flower stops the Shade Lord. Godseeker's dialogue in Godseeker mode, which is set after Embrace the Void, also suggests her having accepted the Shade Lord. When the knight offers the White Lady a flower, she declines, choosing to keep her regrets just as she has chosen to imprison herself. In the red memory, both Hornet and the White Lady accept the truth of their family's actions, upon which the flower's light fully manifests in Hornet's memory, and she is able to bring it into the physical world. What do you think of the Everbloom's lore? Do you agree with my explanation for why Hornet's Everbloom is not fragile? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. There are always questions about Hollow Knight and Silksong's lore to be explored, and I'm happy to offer my speculations as long as people are willing to listen to me do so. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.